In the deep folds of the Missouri hills, where coal dust greeted every sunrise and hunger chased every sunset, the town of Hollow Creek clung to survival like roots on a dying tree. The mine was its only heartbeat. Every man who lived there either entered the earth willingly or was forced by necessity to do so. Elias Turner was among the latter. He was a broad-shouldered man with worn hands and quiet eyes. His silence made some think him aloof, others thought him cold. Only a few saw the truth. His quietness came not from pride, but from pain that had settled so deep inside him that words simply could not reach it anymore. For 20 years, Elias had descended daily into the mine's darkness, where the lanterns barely pushed back the black, and where each breath tasted of dirt and steel. His father had died in that same mine, lungs collapsing under years of inhaling coal dust. Yet Elias returned every day because it was the only way to afford medicine, food, and the small cabin he shared with his daughter Maggie. Maggie was his entire world. She carried her mother's eyes and her mother's illness as well. The hills took as much as they gave. Elias's evenings were slow, rituals of love and worry. After 12 hours underground, he would walk home through the narrow path carved into the hillside. His boots left tracks in the snow or dust, depending on the season, always leading to the same warm glow that escaped the cabin window. Inside waited Maggie. Her laughter could soften any man's heart, yet her chest often rattled with coughs that frightened Elias more than any cave-in ever could. She would sit wrapped in a knitted quilt her mother had stitched before she passed, looking smaller each month. Elias cooked her vegetable broth and told stories about stars shining beyond coal dust and smoke. He spoke of a place beyond the hills where trees grew fruit instead of fungus, and the sky smelled of rain, not soot. Maggie would listen, eyes bright. She believed every word he said. "Will we go there one day, Papa?" she would ask, hand gripping his sleeve. "Yes," Elias always replied, even when doubt gnawed at him. "One day soon. I swear it. Promises are easy when hope is young, harder when it starts to suffocate." One bitter evening, Maggie collapsed into a coughing fit that turned her lips blue. Elias lifted her in trembling arms and rushed through the cold to the home of Doc Bramford, a man who had watched the hills take more children than he cared to count. After examining Maggie, the doctor sighed, a long, tired sigh. "You know what I'm going to say," he murmured. Elias clenched his fists. "The dust is destroying her lungs," Doc Bramford continued. "If she stays here much longer, she will not see womanhood. She needs clean air, new surroundings, a life away from the mines." Elias absorbed the words like blows. Hope splintered inside him. "I cannot leave," he whispered. "I have only the mine." "Then you must find another way," the doctor said, placing a sympathetic hand on his shoulder. "Her future cannot be buried underground." Elias walked home slowly, each step sinking into the snow like an anchor pulling him under. Inside the cabin, Maggie slept peacefully, unaware of the sentence that had just been delivered upon her life. Elias sat and watched her chest rise and fall. He could not lose her as he had lost her mother. He needed to fight, even if the battle seemed impossible. All that night, Elias stared through the frosted window at the looming hills. They were walls holding his family hostage. Beyond them lay clean air. Beyond them could be Maggie's salvation. He thought of digging, not down into the earth as every miner did, but through it. The hills were not endless. On the far side was a valley with streams and settlements. Travel by mountain roads was too far and too expensive for a sick child. Yet the distance in a straight line? Shorter. Conceivable. A tunnel. A tunnel to a new world. The idea sounded absurd, risky, futile. Yet it was a seed hope planted in desperation. Maggie woke briefly near dawn. "Papa, why are you still awake?" He smiled tiredly. Because I found a way to get you sunshine. She smiled through her weakness. I knew you would. Her trust made his decision absolute. Failure was no longer an option. The following evening after his shift, Elias went to Cobb's Tavern, the only gathering place in Hollow Creek. Miners filled its smoky interior with rowdy noise, trying to drown out the fear that one day the mine would not give them back. Elias stood by the bar, cleared his throat, and spoke louder than usual. I will no longer dig for coal. I will dig us a tunnel out of this valley, through the hills, to a better life. The tavern fell silent for a breath. Then laughter erupted like a detonated charge. You alone? With what army? You planning to tunnel to China next? Try digging to the moon while you're at it. Elias listened expressionlessly. Mockery meant nothing compared to Maggie's life. One miner, younger and kinder, pulled him aside. Why not leave by the road? Elias answered quietly. A journey Maggie cannot survive. The young man nodded, sympathy replacing humor. Still, most men laughed long after Elias left. They forgot him before they drained their next cups. He walked home that night under a clear sky. Stars looked like pinholes leading to other worlds. Elias decided he would make one his own. Elias purchased a new pickaxe, a lantern, and a wheelbarrow using every coin he had saved for Maggie's medicine. It terrified him, yet he believed this was the cure she truly needed. Before sunrise, while dew still clung to the weeds, Elias walked with Maggie to the base of the largest hill. It stood like a beast daring any man to challenge it. He kissed Maggie's forehead, handed her a warm blanket, and stepped into the shadow cast by the hill. The first swing of his pickaxe cracked the silence. The sound echoed like a shot across the valley. Sweat soon formed despite the cold. The handle burned against his palms. Each strike revealed only inches of progress. Hours felt like days. When his strength faltered, he looked over to Maggie. She clapped faintly, cheering with a weak smile. You are stronger than the mountain, she whispered. Her belief carved through more rock than any tool. News traveled faster than trains in small towns. Soon crowds gathered to mock the solitary miner digging a tunnel to nowhere. Children giggled. Adults smirked or shook their heads. That fool wants to move mountains. He should be home taking care of the girl. No man can fight the earth itself. Even the mine supervisor, Mr. Clarence Harlan, visited with more disgust than curiosity. You miss another shift, you lose your job, Harlan growled. I will not have my workers wasting energy on fantasies. Elias bowed his head. He said nothing. He returned to work the next morning, but every night he returned to the tunnel, working long past exhaustion. Maggie waited at home, knitting little gifts to encourage him. Small efforts of love that meant the world. Some dreams require madness before they earn respect. On a rare rest Sunday, Maggie called Elias to her bedside. I made something, she said shyly, handing him a folded paper. It was a child's drawing but filled with careful love. A tunnel led to sunlight. Past it stood a small cabin surrounded by flowers. Two figures held in hands in front of it, smiling as though the world carried no sorrow. This is where we are going, she whispered, when you reach the sunshine. Elias blinked away tears and placed the drawing on the tunnel wall where he could see it with every strike. Her dreams became the blueprint of his labor. Months passed. The tunnel stretched deeper into darkness. Some townsfolk began to soften. Elias's persistence became a spectacle of human will. Maybe he is onto something. At least the man fights for something. He is digging for love, not glory. Others grew harsher. He is setting a bad example. That child needs a sane father. God would not block a path if it was meant to be. The preacher even dedicated a sermon to warn against the prideful pursuit of impossible dreams. Elias attended no church. His worship was labor. His prayer was the swing of a pickaxe. And day by day, the opening behind him grew smaller while the darkness ahead stretched on. The rainy season arrived, saturating the hills. Mud slid down slopes. Wind howled through trees like mourning spirits. Elias worked inside the tunnel during one stormy evening. The lantern flickered against dripping walls. His muscles screamed, but he pressed on. Suddenly, the ground trembled. A sharp crack split the silence. The ceiling buckled. Elias heard a roar like thunder and leapt backward. Rock and dirt crashed down where he had just been standing. Dust filled the air, choking his lungs. He barely crawled out before the tunnel entrance sealed with rubble. Bruised, bleeding, terrified, he stumbled into the storm. Maggie rushed toward him, coughing hard, tears mixing with rain. "Papa, please stop," she begged, gripping his clothes with trembling hands. "I do not want the tunnel anymore. I just want you." Elias held her close, heartbreaking. Yet deep behind his sorrow, one truth lived. Stopping meant surrendering Maggie to the mind's cruelty. He kissed her forehead and whispered, voice trembling, "I must finish, my darling. The sunshine is waiting for you." Lightning scratched the sky above them. The storm raged on. Dreams that matter most are often born in darkness. Winter was relentless that year. The cabin's thin walls barely kept the cold out, and Maggie's cough worsened. Each rasping breath sounded like a small fracture in Elias's heart. Her frailty had grown alarming. She now spent most of her days in bed, wrapped in blankets that smelled faintly of coal dust. Elias, exhausted from both mining shifts and tunneling at night, refused to let despair paralyze him. He would sit by her side after work, hands stroking her hair, murmuring softly, "Papa is digging away to the sun, Maggie. You'll breathe fresh air soon." She would nod weakly, a small smile curling her lips, unaware of how grave her condition had become. Her strength was fading faster than Elias could dig, but her spirit remained stubbornly bright, a fragile candle flickering in the darkness. Every swing of his pickaxe now carried urgency. Every inch gained underground was a stolen chance at life for her. One afternoon, while Elias dug, a tall figure appeared at the tunnel's entrance. He was a man in fine boots and a tailored coat, a visitor from outside the valley. His name was Mr. Whitlock, a land surveyor and wealthy traveler who had heard rumors of the miner digging a tunnel to nowhere. Whitlock watched Elias silently, studying the sweat-streaked face, the trembling hands, and the unwavering determination. "What are you digging for?" Whitlock asked, curiosity breaking the silence. Elias wiped his brow and answered without hesitation, "For life." For her life, Whitlock's eyes softened. "Most men dig for gold. You dig for hope." He left without offering help, but a quiet admiration lingered. He would not forget the man who dared defy the hills themselves. As months passed, Mr. Harlan, the mine supervisor, lost patience. Elias had begun arriving late for shifts after long nights in the tunnel. His wages, essential for Maggie's survival, were now in jeopardy. "You're done here, Turner," Harlan said, voice flat and final. "I will not tolerate your foolishness any longer. Miss another day, and you're out." Elias's stomach sank. No wages meant no medicine, no food, no hope. He left the office quietly, the weight of his failure pressing down like the hills themselves. Still, he could not abandon the tunnel. Every stone he removed was another promise kept to Maggie. Every step closer to the far side was a prayer for her life. Survival of the body, Elias realized, could not outweigh survival of the soul. Food became scarce. The coal stove barely warmed the cabin. Maggie's weakness increased with every passing day. Elias sold the last of their possessions, silver spoons, blankets, even his father's old watch, to buy a small bag of cornmeal. Neighbors whispered about the Turner family. Some pitied the girl, others condemned the father for letting dreams starve reality. One woman, Mrs. Hanley, a widowed neighbor with soft eyes, refused to judge. She brought bread and warm stew, leaving it outside the cabin door. "You keep digging, Elias," she whispered as he thanked her. "Some miracles take longer than men can see." Elias nodded silently, the weight of the world pressing down, yet the tunnel calling him forward. Hunger gnawed at their bellies, but hope gnawed louder at his heart. One cold dawn, Maggie's condition worsened. Her breaths were shallow, each one sounding like a crack in porcelain. Elias carried her to Doc Branford once more, but the doctor shook his head. "She has days at best," he said softly. "There is nothing more I can do." Elias felt his heart twist. He had promised her sunshine, promised a life beyond the hills, and now the light of that promise seemed impossibly far. That night, Maggie, too weak to rise, looked at him with tired eyes. "Did you reach the sunshine yet, Papa?" she whispered. He pressed her hand to his lips, holding back tears. "Almost, my darling. Almost there." Even in despair, he had to believe. Dreams, he realized, sometimes outlast life itself. That night, Elias returned to the tunnel. Rain lashed against the hillside, thunder rolled, and the wind howled like a chorus of ghosts. Every strike of his pickaxe echoed against the rock with primal fury. He swung with grief, with love, with desperation. Every fiber of his being poured into each blow. Dust and sweat filled the small tunnel as he pushed forward inch by inch, heedless of exhaustion. Finally, a rush of wind touched his face. A narrow slice of moonlight illuminated the opening ahead. He had done it. The tunnel pierced the other side of the hill. Elias dropped the pickaxe and ran toward the light. There it was, clean air, fresh grass, and stars glittering over the open valley. The dream he had been chasing in darkness existed beyond his hands. Bursting into the cabin, Elias called Maggie's name. Silence answered him. The room was still. He ran to her bedside and knew before touching her. Her small body lay limp, the final breath already taken. Elias collapsed beside her, tears streaming freely for the first time in years. All the nights of labor, all the sweat and pain, all the impossible hope, it had not saved her. Yet even in grief, he understood one truth. Her faith in him had carved a tunnel through the impossible. Maggie had believed in him. That belief had created a path forward. He could honor her memory by keeping it alive. The townsfolk gathered silently to bury Maggie at the tunnel entrance. Even those who had once mocked Elias now bowed their heads in respect. He chose the spot where sunlight first touched the earth at dawn. Each morning, a golden beam would fall upon her grave, a reminder of what had been lost and what had been fought for. Elias did not speak. He simply stood, listening to the wind whisper through the hills as if Maggie herself had returned in spirit. A few days later, Mrs. Hanley delivered a small bundle to Elias. Inside was a folded paper, Maggie's final drawing. It depicted a small cabin bathed in sunlight, flowers all around, and two figures smiling. On the back, in her delicate handwriting, "Papa, I am already in the sunshine." "Keep digging," Elias wept. In her own way, Maggie had reminded him that the tunnel was not to nowhere. It was a passage through despair, a legacy carved in stone and love. He understood then that life was sometimes about leaving paths behind, even if we cannot walk them ourselves. Months passed. Elias reinforced the tunnel, clearing it for safe passage. Whitlock returned, impressed by the feat. He offered to purchase land on the far side and help establish a small community. The tunnel, once mocked as foolishness, became a vital passage for trade, visitors, and new settlers. The townsfolk named it Maggie's Gate, honoring the child whose faith had inspired the impossible. Elias never stopped visiting her grave, whispering softly, "You were right, my darling." This tunnel does not go to nowhere. It goes to love, to hope, to life. He continued to dig, not through hills, but through fear, grief, and despair, showing that perseverance, love, and belief could carve even the impossible into reality.